Yes, sir, I did.
Did
I
you get
appreciate
in?
you. Yes, sir.
It's working?
Appreciate you, man. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Henry County Board of Commissioners, Tuesday, May 18, 2021 Board of Commission meeting. We're going to have our invocation by Chaplain Leonard Himes, Henry County PD, our fire department.
Thank you. Glad to be here this evening. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Our Father in heaven, we thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to come together. Lord, we know that you designed and created civil government. And I ask you for your wisdom to impart all those involved in decisions and, Lord, problems. And Father, I ask you to keep hearts and minds and, Lord, communication open. May this function as you've designed it. Bless this meeting and everyone in attendance. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Now we have a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We had a presentation from our probate judge, Kelly Powell, that has been removed upon her request. Next, we'll have the proclamation for the bicentennial.
I'd like to read the proclamation recognizing 2021 as Henry County's bicentennial, celebrating the 200th anniversary of Henry County. Whereas Henry County, Georgia was created by the Georgia State Legislature on May 15, 1821, and signed into law by the governor on December 24, 1821. Whereas the year 2021 marks the 200th year of Henry County's existence, and its bicentennial celebration is a wonderful opportunity to learn about its past, enjoy its present, and look towards its future. Whereas the Henry County Board of Commissioners, the cities of Hampton, Locust Grove, McDonough, and Stockbridge the Henry County Board of Education, the Henry County Chamber of Commerce, and many community partners and organizations seek to appropriately recognize and celebrate this historic 200th anniversary, appreciating the county's rich history, diverse culture, and thriving community. Now therefore, be it proclaimed by the Henry County Board of Commissioners, City Councils, and the Henry County Board of Education that the year 2021 is recognized as the bicentennial year of the creation of the Henry County, Georgia, and encourage every resident to take time this year to celebrate this historic anniversary and honor its contributions to the prosperity of the state of Georgia. This was signed the 15th day of May, 2021. Thank you.
Now move to appointments. Appointment to the Henry County Water Authority Board, county at large position. This appointment is being made by the chair. That appointment will be Fred Mays. Per Senate Bill 286, no vote is needed. Of a nomination and appointment to the Henry County Developmental Authority, county at large. The chair nominates Charles E. Marshall for the appointment to the Henry County Development Authority. I'd like to call for a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Next appointment is the appointment of an assistant county attorney. Whereas Patrick Jockstetter of the law firm of Jarrett and Davis LLP currently serves as our county attorney, the chair has determined it's necessary and appropriate to appoint Ann Crompton Brown with the law firm of Barnes and Thornbill LLP to serve as assistant county attorney for special projects. Per Senate Bill 22, no vote is needed. Moving on to our consent agenda. Our County Manager, Sherry Matthews.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. Our consent agenda for Tuesday, May 18th, 6:30 Board of Commissioner meeting is as follows. Police Department, a resolution approving the purchase for Henry County Police Department for the Vitra Incorporated simulation firearm equipment for a total of $45,831.28 per year to be renewed yearly for a 5-year period. The initial purchase from the Red Speed account will be $53,251.28 for the first year. The next item is a resolution of the Board of Commissioners to approve the demolition and removal of the home located at Henry County Public Safety Firing Range, located at 2650 Stroud Road in McDonough, Georgia. The next item is a resolution accepting a $1,500 from the United States Secret Service Cyber Forensics Task Force Digital Evidence Forensics Lab, CFTF/DEFL, for participation in the Electronic Crimes Task Force. Under the Sheriff's Office, we have a resolution accepting an equipment and supplies grant for $3,000 from the Georgia Emergency Management through Federal Emergency Management to help maintain EOD K-9. Under the Fire Department, we have a resolution approving the request for proposal for direct source vehicle exhaust capturing system to Johnson Locks Construction Safe Air Corporation in the amount of $797,170. Funding in the amount of $725,272 is provided under the Assistance to Firefighters Grant of the Department of Homeland Security, with a local match of $72,527 to be provided via the Capital Projects Fund. Under Stormwater, we have a resolution of the Henry County Board of Commissioners approving the bid award to Quality Construction by McLeroy for the construction of Red Oak Road storm drainage replacement in the amount of $91,400. We also have a resolution of the Henry County Board of Commissioners approving to Summit Construction and Development the bid award 21-74 and number 21-75 for storm drainage replacements at 2 locations on Strawberry Drive in the amounts of $64,766 and $64,484. Under SPLOS, we have a resolution approving bid award number 21-79 for construction of improvements to the intersection of State Route 20 at Turner Church Road to Quality Construction by McLeroy, Inc. in the amount of $1,900,732.85, and that is a SPLOS project in District 3. And then we have a resolution approving a bid award number 2180 for construction of improvements to the intersection of State Route 155 at Greenwood Parkway to GTG traffic signals in the amount of $325,000. This is a SPLOS project located in District 2. And then the final item is under Leisure Services. For senior services, we have a resolution approving a contract with the Georgia Department of Human Services Community Service Block Grant Program for federal fiscal year 2022 in the amount of $274,435 with no local match required. This ends the consent agenda.
Call for a motion. Can I get a second? All in favor? This moves us to our regular agenda. Financial Services, public hearing and adoption of the 2021-2022 budget.
Good evening again, Chair and members of the board. This evening, you'll be joined by myself and our Financial Services Director, Mr. David Smith, who will hopefully get us through the final public hearing required as part of the adoption of our FY 21-22 budget. As you all will recall, we've had multiple workshops to discuss our budget, and then 2 weeks ago, we did have a public hearing, which is required for the establishment and setting of our FY 22 budget. This evening, David and I will go very quickly through the PowerPoint presentation because it is a repeat of what you all have previously heard with a couple of amendments. During the last meeting, Commissioner Thomas did request that we reduce the amount of funding allocated for the Board of Ethics, and so this budget does reflect that reduction from $200,000 to $50,000. We did also contact DeKalb County, who has an ethics board, to get an idea of what the cost would be. And right now, DeKalb County provides about $500,000 for their Board of Ethics. One of the reasons we are looking to reduce the amount is because it is not for a full fiscal year. It will only start in January, and so we'll get a better idea of what the cost will need to be. But if we determine that we will need additional funding, we can do that at mid-year and make those necessary adjustments. And so the budget will reflect that change. So very quickly, I will go through what has been presented in the event that we have residents that are joining us this evening that may not have been able to participate in the previous workshop meetings. So again, our FY22 general fund proposed budget is $189,644,918. Again, this is with no use of fund balance. The budget is based on a current millage rate of 12.733, which is the millage rate that we've had, or we had for the previous year. Again, this millage rate is what we're proposing to get to that $189,644 number. The budget also includes all positions that were requested for the 4th judgeship and filling several vacancies, which I'll go through later in the presentation. Other actions include proposed recommendations to maintain some of our ongoing objectives of the board regarding maintaining employee benefits and service levels. So, in order to develop our budget, we did have to take into consideration the impact that COVID-19 has had not only on our county budget, but throughout the community as well. And so we did see some declines in some of our revenues where we typically were trending at the levels that we needed to trend at. Under ambulance billing, we saw a decline. Under charges for other services, which is some of our rentals for some of our parks and uses throughout the county, we saw a decline. And then on some of our grants, we did see a small decline in terms of revenues. But we were able to capture, where we had some declines, we were able to capture some additional funds through CARES funding that we received, and also through an approval by the board to allocate funding for small businesses and nonprofit programs. During 2021, some of the things that we did to cut back and mitigate some of our expenses were vacancy savings. We did hold on a number of positions that were not as critical as some of our public safety positions. We did reduce our travel and training. If there was an opportunity to participate virtually, we did participate virtually versus staff being able to travel to various locations. And then we charged our department directors with making sure that they were maintaining some of their expenses. And so we did ask them to take a very hard look at determining if some of the things that they were needing, if those were needs or just things that we wanted at the moment. And so we've done a great job on trying to mitigate going into preparing for our FY22 budget. So again, the assumptions that we have to look at whenever we're developing a budget is always, what are we going to get from our local taxes? What are we going to get from our sales tax? And then again, what's most critical for myself and David, in order for us to continue to maintain the strong financial state that we're in now, is not utilizing our fund balance. Our local tax increased at 4%, which generated approximately $4 million. And then we also saw an increase in our sales tax of about 6%, which equates to $2.4 million. What we were able to determine is that during the pandemic, a number of employees who typically would have traveled outside of the county didn't travel. They stayed home and they spent more money here in the county. And so that definitely led to some of our increases in our local and sales tax. So we also have to look at, whenever developing a budget, what our expenditures are going to be, what we've heard from the board, what you all have identified as priorities, and what we need to ensure that we are including in our budget. Under human resources, we have about a $5 million assumption. The fourth judgeship, $615,000. Keep in mind, the fourth judgeship will begin in January, and so a lot of those positions won't start until either the 1st of January or in some cases maybe December to get those people hired on. And then public safety had some critical needs that we needed to address, and so that's to the tune of about $2 million. Under human resources, I think I've gone over this before with you all, but when we start talking about the human resources piece, there were 3 critical pieces that we wanted to ensure we included in our budget. The COLA and the longevity, which is in direct correlation with our class and compensation plan that was approved by the board. The board did elect to take on the insurance increase for all of our employees, and so that was definitely a plus for us. The pension increase, and then the vesting change. One of the things that we have to make sure is that we are funding our pension at the levels that we need to fund it at. And so for the last 3 years, that's one thing that we've really pushed hard in, making sure that we are funding our pension. The vesting change, that is taking all of our employees who may have come in under a 10-year vesting to a 5-year vesting at a cost of $200,000 to our employees. Under the fourth judgeship, I won't read all of the departments, but what this line item shows is just simply what the cost will be to add those additional positions for the fourth judgeship. And then on the slide, which has changed since the previous meeting, the Board of Ethics, instead of $200,000, $50,000 is shown there. Keep in mind, we will revisit the Board of Ethics, and if we need to do a mid-year adjustment in December, we can do that at that time. Under public safety, we are recommending additional officers at a cost of $1.5 million. And then the E911 reclassification at $58,000, where all of those employees will now fall under our public safety plan. That E911 reclassification will be paid for out of our E911 fees. Some of the additional positions that have been included in the budget, we have code enforcement, animal control, E911, our building department, the district attorney office, and I do want to make sure under specifically the district attorney and the sheriff's office, those positions are in addition to what they're getting with the fourth judgeship. And so that paralegal is an additional position in addition to what will also, or what has also been recommended as part of the fourth judgeship. And then again, under our public safety, we have the police department and the sheriff's office getting a large share of those additional positions that we're recommending for approval at a cost of about $1.99 million. And so additional funding that we've also had to look at under elections, this board did gracefully approve us to purchase the new elections facility. We're moving expeditiously on that, but we've also recognized that we're going to need some additional funding to make sure that we're able to get that facility outfitted and ready for our elections team to move in. Again, under the Clerk of Superior Court, we have the Board of Ethics with the January 1, 2022 start. Under state court, the board did approve an indigent defense contract, which we have to fund, and so that's the increase there. Under community service, we have our litter pickup contract at about $100,000. And I know, hopefully, you all have been able to see a difference in some of the litter control throughout the county. If not, please let me know. We are really staying on the consultant about that. But I've been pleased over the last couple of weeks to see that there has definitely been a better look for a number of our major thoroughfares throughout the county. And then finally, under DOT, you will see an increase within that line item. We are looking to look at phase 2 of the Panola Mountain project, and then some greenway and lighting along Jonesboro Road. And so hopefully you all have this in front of you. I won't try to go line item by line item, but again, this is just a summary of what we're recommending for our FY22 budget. Again, the projected revenue is $189,644,988, with expenditures being the same, showing a balanced budget, again, with no use of fund balance. So some of the areas that we always talk about, and I know some of you all receive questions about, is what percentage of the budget goes to specific service areas. Outside of the other financing uses, which is our debt payments that we have to pay, which represents about 47% of our budget, the largest share goes to our public safety at about 26%, followed by our fourth judgeship, which will come into play in January, our public works, and then our housing and development. Those are critical because public works is our sidewalks, our transportation, our DOT and service-oriented uses. And then the housing and development is exactly what's happening now with the amount of growth, buildings that are occurring, and making sure that the staffing is there so that we can make sure that we enhance that level of service within that group. Again, judicial represents 6%, general government is 1%, and then the ethics administration is 1%. At this time, I'll pause. I'm going to turn it over to David if you all don't have any questions, and then I'll come back and present the final resolution.
Yes, Commissioner Holmes.
You consistently state that we're not using fund balance, but we have a resolution in place where we won't go below 25%. What are we doing with the excess funding over the 25%?
So we have a policy that's 30%. This board approved the 30% policy. And what we have done with the additional funds that are above that 30% is for one-time expenses. If you'll recall, one of the things that we included in our fund balance from the previous budget year was an allocation for economic development activities. So if there were a development that were to come to the county that this board could agree on that we want to do some type of public-private partnership, we have funding that's set aside for that. We also have some pending, I'm going to say, not litigations, but tax issues that we have to get resolved, so we've set aside funds for that. And then again, if there's just any type of emergency one-time expenses, that's what we'll utilize those funds for.
How much do we have that's unallocated over and above the 30%?
So David says above the 30%, we'll have about $30 million. Is that it, Commissioner Holmes? Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. A couple of questions, and thank you for a great presentation. And I just want to make sure some of the things that we had talked about is in the presentation. And David has said to me, you need detail by detail, don't you? I said, well, yeah, sometime I do. So I want to make sure, again, we took care of our 911 employees, and they will be fully vested in the 5-year plan as anybody else with all the benefits that are available to everybody else, correct?
That is correct.
In addition to that, we were very concerned about where their pay scale was now in comparison to other counties. Has that been addressed in this budget here?
No, ma'am, that has not. That was going to come back to the board after we approved this budget. Our HR team, right after the meeting 2 weeks ago, they start reaching out to surrounding jurisdictions so they can bring back a recommendation to the board. So that is something that we will be bringing back, but it has not been included in this budget. And it doesn't have to be included in this budget because that's a separate fund. So our 911 operators are under an enterprise fund. So there's ample funding, I believe, in that account to be able to pay for any of those recommended increases.
Okay. And again, I want to go back to our police officers. You know, I'm really trying to find those dollars for making sure we compensate them based upon education levels. Is that ready to put in this budget as of yet?
No, ma'am. If you'll recall, I think the board requested that we do some type of workshop meeting and present all of that to the board. And so our HR team is working on that so that we can bring something back to you all. I do believe we initially had incorporated the housing allowance in the budget, but not the educational piece. And my question that I posed back to the board, I believe the initial request was just for PD. And I think I asked the board, do we want to look at PD, fire, sheriff? I don't believe we ever came to a final resolution on that. So the educational piece and the housing allowance was both removed from the budget that we're presenting this evening. But that is certainly something that we can bring back to the board. But I do need some direction in terms of, do we want to look at all of public safety, or are we just looking at police? Because what we presented was just for the police department.
But we do have funding available once we complete that workshop and give you some sense of direction.
I think we will be able to identify funding, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you didn't mention any savings that would be realized for some other areas we spoke about, which were the SROs that are in our system, the crossing guards that are in our system, and the reimbursement that we should receive from conducting a special election for the Board of Education. Are any of those dollars or figures in this budget at all?
So yes, ma'am, those are still in the budget, but those are very small compared to the overall budget. If you'll recall, I believe the school resource officers are refunded or reimbursed to the county at 100%, just the salaries and benefits piece. Now the training, the uniforms, those are costs that we have to take on. The school crossing guards, that is still in the budget, but that's at a tune of about $352,000. And so what I believe the board asked, and I asked this of the board, was for you all to direct me to submit something either to the Board of Education requesting that they take on the school crossing guards. I think I asked that during the last meeting, but I don't believe there was a motion made to direct me to do such.
Well, I think we've been giving you permission to do that for almost a year and a half now before the board changed over, and that has not happened. Now, since this board has changed over, you've not gotten those directions.
So in order for that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We need to find a way to finalize these things. We need to finalize what we're going to do for the police officer or public safety, and we need to finalize what we're going to do with the SROs, crossing guards, and the reimbursement for the special election that we paid for, that we conducted for the Board of Education. So those are things that we have not yet addressed, and each time we get before each other, we're talking about the fact we haven't come to a conclusion. What can you put before us? When can we have that? Can you present it to the chair so we can have a workshop or whatever's necessary so that we can finish this conversation? And we've not finished it. We constantly talk about it, but it's not finished.
And Commissioner Thomas, you and I agree. And if 4 members of the board will make a motion to make it happen, we'll bring it back to the board. But I can't have one commissioner direct me to contact the Board of Education regarding school crossing guards if another member of the board, that's not the direction that they want to go in. So I will ask the board again, because I asked 2 weeks ago, if there's a desire for us to eliminate the school crossing guard component under the police department, then I just need a motion. I need a motion, and I need for this board to take action on it. And we'll proceed with it. I don't have a problem doing that at all. In terms of the Board of Elections, we have been in conversation with Ms. Pitts at the Board of Elections. An invoice was sent to the Board of Education, if I remember, maybe a week and a half ago. We have not heard back. I don't believe payment has been made at this time. I know our county attorney participates in the Board of Election meetings, so he may be able to share more information in terms of that, but they have been invoiced for the elections that was conducted by the county.
Okay, Madam Chair, I would just like to propose that consider for an agenda item these items that we have unresolved, to see if we can come to some type of resolution later to give our manager a sense of direction.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I mean, yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Clemens?
Yes, Sharon, I know that you and Patrick have been in conversation about, you and Patrick have been in conversation about renewing the agreement with Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta. Is that in the budget?
Yes, ma'am. So those funds will be allocated in the budget, and that's going to come back to the board on June the 2nd. So yes, we'll make sure that those funds are incorporated in the budget, which it should have already been because we were under the previous group. So yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Holmes.
Now that the weather is starting to warm up, I'm getting a lot of requests regarding the pad up at Fairview Park or the Village Park. Please let the community know where we are on that and when they can anticipate that getting repaired.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, I believe Jonathan Penn is here. We're actually having to place something on the pad to keep individuals from slipping, and so I think it's on the upcoming agenda, but I'm going to get JP to give us an update real quick.
Yes, Sherry, you are correct. We have a agenda item on the June meeting for approval of replacement of the flooring. We have to replace it for safety reasons. We're getting the new grip flooring on there. Unfortunately, it wasn't installed when the splash pad was put in there. So to eliminate a lot of the risks that we're having, we're installing that. And once we get that approved, then I will have a more definite timeline on when we will open the splash pad.
Water is going to be back running. I mean, that's the request that the citizens are making. The water has been down for over a year, and people are pounding my door down trying to figure out when this thing is going to be back up and running.
So we will award that contract at the June 2nd meeting, and we'll have a better timeline. We don't want to turn the water on because right now there's more of a safety issue because we don't have the slip-resistant padding that's needed. So hopefully I'll have an answer, but
The issue is not turning the water on. The water isn't working. So we need to get the water fixed so it works. So if you guys can send somebody up there to check that out, if you talk,
We'll check it out and get back.
talk to Mr. Bailey about it, that'd be great.
Okay,
Thank you.
will do. Any other questions pertaining to budget? Okay, if not, I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and Henry County community. We've done the general fund budget as a part of any budget since the board has so graciously approved us to have a capital plan, and I'm going to run through this fairly quickly as well because we've been through it before, and just talk to what our fiscal year 2022 capital plan is and what our overall 5-year plan is. So I'll just get to that slide. On this particular slide, what you have in front of you is a total of $19.7 million in capital projects to be included in the fiscal year 2022 budget. Our 5-year capital improvement plan includes several significant projects that are going to total $117.9 million. It's broken down as indicated on the slide. My proposed funding mechanism will be pay-as-you-go, impact fees, fleet replacement from SPLOST 5, and the remaining balance that we have from this fiscal year from our certificates of participation. What's important to note here is that we are including as a capital project the Judicial Center, and my proposed funding mechanism for that is pay-as-you-go, where I'll be coming back before the board requesting that we use fund balance to begin funding the building of that Judicial Center project. I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions? Do we have anyone signed up for public hearing?
No one has signed up for public hearing tonight.
And Chair Harrell, I do apologize. During the last budget meeting, there was a request, I believe, from Commissioner Clemens to allow the coroner to present to the board, and I forgot he is here this evening to present to the board. So my apologies for that, because that was the other request that came from the board. So
Okay.
he is here to present and answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, all right.
During the last meeting, it was questioned about, or during the budget process, rather, I had requested a full-time position for a full-time deputy coroner. And it was not approved during the finalization, as you saw there. So the reason I asked for that approval was because the caseload continues to grow. And I have put together some information that might help the board understand where I'm coming from. You know, a lot of people think that all we do is just show up and say, yep, they're dead, and we leave. But there's more to it. Henry County continues to grow, and we continue to have calls on a daily, sometime hourly basis. And we are notified anytime there's death from violence, suicide, accidents, whether that be motor vehicle trauma or falls at nursing homes. And then, of course, anytime it involves a child. So it's just more, as the county grows, we get more and more calls. And even when the hospital will have to call us on cases. Unfortunately, it's to say, death is a part of life. So people die in the hospital, we still have to be called up until 24 hours of admittance. So drug overdoses, we have to be notified on. So I could go on, and I believe that the police and fire here tonight, they could back me up on what I'm saying. You know, duties. We are elected every 4 years. We have to subpoena medical records. We have to hold inquests and make court appearances, depositions, which I have a deposition scheduled this Thursday at 10 o'clock on a case that was from 2016. We procured biological samples, i.e. blood, and take it to the lab for testing. And like I said, those are just some things there. And I believe it was Madam Chair who had said something to the effect about a medical examiner and a coroner. The only difference between a medical examiner and a coroner is the medical examiner has to be board certified physician, licensed to practice medicine. He performs the examinations, recovers evidence, and completes in-depth body examinations reports. Whereas me and the medical examiner, the difference is he's a doctor, I'm not. But yet we still have other activities that we share when it comes to contacting families, court testimony, and as you can see on that screen there. Now, in order to hire a medical examiner or forensic pathologist, the starting annual salary for one is anywhere from $180,000 to $220,000. And then, of course, you have your benefits that go along with it. And then you would have to hire investigators for them, and then additional equipment such as cars, computers, cell phones. And all I'm asking for is an additional person that already has a vehicle and already has a cell phone and a computer. And then for the last 20 plus years, if not 30 years, we have a medical examiner. I'd like to introduce you to him. There's Dr. Gowett. We contract with Forensic Medicine Associates, who performs our autopsies, and he has the state-of-the-art facility where he already has doctors in place to do the exams, and we're not waiting to get the exams done. So like I said, I came or put in my budget for one person, and that was denied. And I guess my one question is, if accounting-wise, if I fall under public safety and all the other public safety departments are getting stuff because of the growth, why am I left out? I hate to be petty, but that's what it boils down to. So, does the board have any questions?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Wilson.
Do you have a copy of your budget when you handed it in, a copy of it, will you?
I do not with me, no, sir, because I think it, on the board, it was $269,000, I believe.
So, okay, so currently it's yourself and you have 2 part-time positions?
I have one part-time and then one contract,
Both of them?
1099 employee.
Okay, so both of them has been filled?
Well, the part-time was filled when Resolution 19-17, I believe, when the board approved the part-time position.
So a couple of years back, we moved you from paying you from call volume back to a salary employee, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
How many calls were you running back then?
In 2018, we did 467, 2019, 490, and in 2020, 615.
Okay, so the 615 though, it says natural causes are up, and some of those probably tied to COVID deaths as well, right?
We had 17 COVID deaths that I am 100% aware of in 2020.
So you got 3 personnel answering 615 calls.
Actually one, sir, because they're part-time, they have other full-time jobs. They can only work certain times.
And they're paid on a call volume.
They're paid
call,
per
correct?
call, yes, sir, not an hourly rate.
So how many calls do they run versus how many calls do you answer? You have it broke down to how many you answer versus how many they answer?
I don't own me, but I can give you a roundabout figure. I do about 400 to 420 of the calls, and they do the rest.
So
About anywhere from 30 to 60 calls they'll do.
now you mentioned you have to be notified when there's deaths in the hospital. Now, when you say notified, does that mean you leave your residence and go to the hospital? They just call you?
It depending on what the circumstances are,
Do you
Commissioner.
count the notification as part of your calls? Is that
Yes, sir.
so they can call you home? So that's a call.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know how many of those you get? No clue?
No
Okay.
clue.
And
This isn't just 8 to 5 either. We're talking
Okay.
at night from.
So your transport services, though, years back, we went from EMS transporting the bodies, and I think now you contract them out to a transport service.
Yes, sir.
So what is that fee? And
We pay them, I pay them, I believe it's either 25,000 or 30,000. And that includes 2 men, it includes the body bags, and includes transportation to wherever I direct them to take them.
so that 30,000, does it cover all the transports, or 30,000 plus the transport?
No, that covers all of them.
So they could transport 600 versus 300 for the same price?
They probably transport around 100 to 150 because not all deaths require transport.
And funeral homes do the rest of them?
Yes, sir.
On your medical examiner, what are we paying him a year?
Right now, we're paying him 110, and he's going up to 130 because of
130.
what this figure right here. In the upper right-hand corner, we're up 31% call-wise, and the drug deaths are off the chart.
So 31% from last year, correct?
Yes, sir.
So that was just trending. What did it trend from the year before that, though? I know the COVID had a lot to do with the call volume trending, not just because they die from COVID, but from other things that people die from because of the COVID.
That was
suicides
aggravated
and
by,
that type thing.
Yeah, it was
So how
aggravated
did
by
the
COVID.
numbers trend before COVID?
Before COVID, right here, 2018.
Percentage-wise, you have that broke down percentage? Okay, all right, I can figure that out, that's no problem.
And see, in addition to these deaths, when people are found at home to be unconscious and unresponsive, and EMS responds and they do CPR, they have EMS has a policy to where after 20 minutes, if there's no viability left in the person, they call the hospital and seek permission to terminate CPR efforts, which as soon as that happens, the ball's back in my court again. So I would have to, me, or depending on if I was out of town, somebody who's covering for me would have to go to that scene.
So when we look at medical examiner, how long have we been using this medical examiner to do autopsies?
I can tell you over 25 years.
So have we looked to see if we could get maybe the GBI to do them for, do they do them for nothing, or how does that work?
The GBI will do them, and yes, sir, there's no cost. However, there is a cost, and that is it takes 3 to 6 months to get reports back from the GBI, where toxicology that we wait on for drug deaths takes 3 months to get back, where using the examination system we have now, medical examiner we have now rather, we get those back in about 4 weeks. And then on top of that, the GBI has certain criteria whether or not they even perform an exam. For example, if a man standing up here 55 years old and just falls out suddenly and collapses and he dies, and he has no medical history, they're not going to look at him because they're tied up. They've had to close down labs. They've closed the Macon lab because they have lack of examiners down there. With autopsies, and police can attest to this, when we have homicides, sometimes we have to wait 5 to 6 days for an autopsy to take place because the GBI is so backed up. So while you can look at it one way saying that it'll probably save some money, on the flip side, it's not, because unfortunately, the people have to rely on those reports for insurance purposes and to pay the facilities, like funeral homes, crematories. And I'm sure Commissioner Cannon can attest to that.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Commissioner Holmes.
Henry County, for the last number of years, has been the first or second fastest growing county in the metro area. That means we're amongst the first and second in the state of Georgia. You were duly elected. You serve as coroner basically alone. And you're just asking for one person.
Yes, sir.
And your department is identified under public safety. I don't see what the issue is, especially when you look at that chart. And you can see that the deaths have increased incrementally year over year. So I remember when I was elected, we were around 200,000. We're probably around 270, 280, maybe even 300,000 now. So I'm not exactly sure what the big tug of war is here. This is an important elected position in this county, and this is an office that needs to be supported.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Thomas.
You just say you have 2 part-time positions, and one is field and one is not field, or both are not field, or what did you say?
I have 2 part-time positions, and they are both field. One is paid by they're both paid by the call, and one of them is considered part-time, like I said, with that resolution that was passed, and then the other one is a contract employee, which means he's a 1099 employee.
Okay.
In addition, Commissioner Clemens.
Can you explain to us what this extra person would do, and why you need the extra person if you have 2 part-time people that are on call?
Well, the extra person would actually assist me in answering calls, because there are days when we have to stack calls, and as big as this county is, going from one end to the other takes time. And also, EMS and PD have to remain on scene till we get there, so that's tying them up if we have calls stacked, that they just have to wait till we get there, preventing them from answering other calls. And if you have a fatality on either the interstate or on a side road, we have to respond to those, and those are time consuming. And so that other person would help me with answering the calls, along with admin purposes of answering open records requests, telephones, helping families out with their questions. So it would be very valuable.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I know that when we did the building for the coroner's office, which was a year ago, we didn't even have a place to store the bodies. We were having people deceased in the county and having to take them other places to store the bodies. I'm in agreement that I think that a second person, full-time person is needed in the coroner's office, simply because when something happens, a fatality happens in the homes, on the streets, to anybody's family member, it's important that work happens quickly and that the bodies are placed properly where they need to be. Tell me about a time frame that is taking you, and I'm sure you're having sometimes more than one person dying at a time. So
On average, I try to respond, once I am notified of a death at the house, I try to answer that call and be there within the hour. And that's actually going from my residence on the west side of town to wherever it is. And then depending on what the circumstances are when you get there, if it's a natural death, you might be there 30 minutes, or if it's a homicide, you might be there 2.5 hours. And Commissioner Clemens, to go back, you're right. In 2019, I believe it was, I came before the, at that time, Assistant County Manager Brad Johnson, and told him that we were not going to be able to store bodies anymore, and he did get a temporary cooler that we have at Old Fire Station in Stockbridge. And then when this building, during the time which this building was being built. So yes, the county has helped me in some ways, and I'm just asking for one other person to help me again.
I would say it's not just for you, it's for the citizens. It's
Oh,
for,
yes, ma'am.
right.
It's for the citizens.
And it's
Yes,
for
ma'am.
those families that have people that are, demise. We want to make sure that we're taking care of the families as well quickly. And so, we're still operating with one coroner the same way we were 100 years ago. We're 100 years old and we're still operating the same way. So I would encourage staff to look at it, look at the amount. And I never heard staff say why we couldn't do it. Was it a budget issue that we couldn't, or we just denied it? Or did someone else say to deny it?
Commissioner, there was no outright denial. It's just that the coroner, because of resolution, he has to come back before the board to request any additional positions. And that's one. Two is we only have so much revenue to spread around, and our focus or priority was on public safety and the other priorities that this board has set. He is public safety for reporting purposes.
He's not public safety?
He is public safety for reporting purposes. So if I want to further specify public safety, the focus was on police, fire. Let me finish, Commissioner. You asked me a question, I wanted to finish.
No, I'm asking you, it's a yes or no question.
That was not a yes or no
Is he
question.
public safety or is he not public safety? I didn't say for reporting. I
He
said,
reports for public safety.
but
under
is he
Chief
public safety
Ammerman.
or not? What is he? What is the coroner's office?
The coroner is an elected official that
public
resides
safety?
on his own. but for accounting purposes, we have him reporting under public safety.
So let me jump in real quick. No, he is not public safety. He is the coroner in an elected position. And I want to make sure I provide some clarification because I'm a little confused now and I need for the coroner to explain to me what he's asking for. So as we develop budgets, we have a budget process. And again, because this is a conversation, I want to make sure the board has all of the information before you make a decision. Our budget team developed the coroner's budget for him this year because he didn't submit a budget. And so it was based on his previous budget request. We understood that he wanted to upgrade a current part-time position to a full-time position. What I'm hearing this evening is that he's looking for a new position. And so that's why it's important that we receive a budget so that we understand what the requests are. And I hate to put him on the spot, but because he's here and we're discussing it, I need to understand what the request is. It is not typical for us to give positions when you have positions that aren't filled. It was my understanding that right now we have the full-time coroner, we have a part-time coroner or part-time deputy, and then the other part-time position was a county employee who was a fireman. We could no longer allow him to serve in that role because we were giving him a 1099 and a W-2, and we can't do that. And so he's no longer in that position. And so it's my understanding, and you'll have to correct me, that that current part-time position is not filled. And so it doesn't make sense for me to come to this board and recommend adding a position if we already have a vacancy on the rolls. It's not a matter of us not wanting to take care of the coroner because what he's asked for, his building, his facility, we've answered to those requests. He made the comment, you know, hey, I'm part of public safety and I'm not getting things. I had a fire department that had a lot of requests. You all didn't see anything for the fire department because a lot of those requests were not things that they needed today. They were things creating new areas that right now we can't focus on because I know that we have 3 new fire stations that have to come online and I've got to give him staffing to do that. And so I want to make sure before you all make a decision, we have all the information. And if we need to go back in 2 or 3 months, once he's filled those 2 part-time positions and bring a resolution, I don't have a problem doing that. I don't want anyone to believe that we don't work well with the coroner because if he asks for something, it may take us a little time to get it done because everything costs money. But he has a very nice state-of-the-art facility. I think you've received your new vehicle? Yes? It's in the process. So what he's asked for, we've provided. The only thing that we haven't been able to give is this full-time position due to a resolution that this board needs to either undo or give us some direction in terms of do you all want to upgrade the position. If the board elects to do what I believe the request was, then all we're doing is taking a part-time to a full-time providing benefits. That's what that would be what the request is. They would have benefits. Now, if it's a new position, then we're now going to add to his roster of his position, 2 part-times, and another full-time position. So I need some clarification on what the request is because maybe I misunderstood and maybe we can get some clarification and kind of go from there.
So I have a question with regards to, so he has 1 full-time that's filled and 1 full-time that's not filled?
No,
I mean,
so
part-time.
he has 2 part-time positions. 1 part-time position is filled and it's my understanding the 2nd part-time position is not filled. Is that correct?
That is incorrect. You're right. The first part-time is filled, and that is the position I want to take to the next level of full-time. The 2nd part-time is due to the fact that he is a 1099 employee, I can appoint as many 1099 employees as I want to under the Georgia Death Investigation Act. However, I keep him and keep my budget down to try to be realistic here, and I keep him in case I need him when I am out of town. So yes, Sherry is right. I want to take the 2nd part-time position up to full-time level. Now, as far as the budget goes, I'm going to have to argue with you a minute on that.
That's fine.
I did submit it because in February I submitted it when I was out of town on vacation and I sent it to Ivy. So I did submit my budget.
Well,
Let me clarify
okay,
that.
please do. Thank you.
So his submission was an Excel spreadsheet of which 2 directly to Ivy, and it did not go through our normal Tyler budget submission process. That's the clarification of that.
So he's saying he did.
A duly elected official submits a his budget. You recognize that he submitted the budget, and you just you just said forget the budget because it didn't come through the process that you wanted it to come through?
No, Commissioner, that's not what I said.
You guys just said that he didn't submit a budget.
He did not submit a budget in the format that we asked all department
So
heads
did you
to submit
follow up
their
with him to
budgets.
see, to get him to submit it the way that you wanted it?
That's our process that we established, Commissioner.
Did you follow up and say, hey, you submitted the budget wrong, can you please resubmit it?
We did reach out to the coroner, sir.
Do you remember them reaching out to you?
Not right off, but like I said, when I submitted it, I was out of town on vacation. And if I might add, I have not had any training in the Tyler system that was converted over, so I don't know anything about how to do budgets in Tyler.
So, without being argumentative, I think there's a lot of issues here. The Tyler training is offered to all of our staff members, so I can't speak to what training the coroner has or has not had. But I can tell you that we have at least 2 other new constitutional officers that joined our staff in January that had to submit a budget through the Tyler system, and their budgets were submitted through the Tyler system. And again, it's not a matter of, and I don't like publicly having to have disputes among constitutionals, elected department directors, but I think it's important for the board to have all of the information. And again, I don't think this is a matter of us not wanting to support the coroner's request, but again, there is a vacancy that's sitting on the books today. And if he were to fill that part-time position, that could provide some relief to him either in his role or his other part-time position. Now, he mentions that the position that he's talking about, he's 1099ing them. We cannot 1099 an employee and W-2 an employee. And so we can't, that is what we're being told, that we cannot do that. And I think that's one of the reasons. I'm sorry? Okay. I heard you, I just couldn't hear it back. Okay. So that is why that position still is sitting there. We haven't taken that position from the coroner. And he can fill that position today with a part-time deputy, which would then give him a backup to a backup.
Go ahead, Commissioner Thomas.
The county manager has stated that there are a number of things that she will be bringing back to us at mid-year for consideration, some increases and maybe some decreases and maybe some additions. And we do need some dollar figures to look at about what the coroner is requesting based upon what's available to him now. I'd like to ask if you would consider allowing that to come back at that mid-year when she brings back the other items for consideration. And then we have some numbers to look at. What would it cost us to bring the other person on? What would it cost for him? He can now immediately hire a part-time person to help him now. And then let's consider the other additions when you bring back to us the other items you said that will be coming back in mid-year so that we can move along. That's what I would like to suggest to this board.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. I'm sorry, Commissioner Wilson.
If we're going to consider increasing the coroner's position to a full-time, I think it's a prime opportunity for the BOC side to look at our budget. So if we're going to start increasing somebody somewhere else, maybe we should be looking at what we can decrease to fund someone else's budget. So it seems to me that it's important to this board to put a full-time position in a coroner's office. But if we think it's that important, maybe we need to be looking at cutting our own budget.
Okay. Okay, so this is a public hearing. Do we have any other persons wishing to speak? on the budget? Hearing none, I'd like to call for a motion to approve the budget.
So moved.
Okay. Second. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a rezoning. Stacy?
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'd just like to state that this rezoning request has been postponed by the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Moving to the next item on the agenda, the Unified Land Development Code Amendment.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. What you have before you tonight is a amendment to the ULDC to address some issues that we had in the overlay district that were identified by staff. If you'll look at the map, what's going on is the overlay district should have stopped at the railroad tracks, but it did include the King Mill Industrial Park, which is actually affecting some of the uses that are allowed to go into the industrial park. So it also includes the Pep Boys building that's on the other side of Highway 75 or Interstate 75. And so basically what we're asking is that you approve the removal of the properties that are inside the industrial park so that they actually can use some of the uses such as truck repair shops and things of that nature for specifically inside the industrial park. Again, we identified the boundary area, and we're not trying to eliminate any of the uses that can be used inside of an industrial area. And so staff recommends correcting the boundaries as indicated. I'll answer any questions. Yes, ma'am.
So basically, what you have here is you are allowing what uses? Let's specifically spell the uses out.
So in the overlay district, it eliminates using
Truck stops?
Truck stops. Not truck stops. Repair shops. Repair shops for trucks. So this is the King Mill Industrial Park. So inside the industrial park, you would expect that that type of use could be allowed. So again, it should have stopped at the railroad tracks, the boundary, but it went across. I guess there was something wrong with a map error or something to that effect. So we're just asking to clean that up.
Can you tell me what's in the green around that blue on 155? What's that green? Is that residential or what's that?
The green.
City?
I think the green is actually city, yes, ma'am.
Okay, but it's residential there, right?
Where is this at? So this is industrial, yeah, so this is residential, yes, ma'am.
Right. So those blues that you're gonna allow the truck business stuff is gonna back up to residential. And
No, this is a buffer, it's across 155. So when you go down industrial here, at the light right there, you've got the old hotel, and then you got Tire City to the left. Across where King Mill with Summit Racing is, that's where that will go. So you won't necessarily see it from the street.
And what other uses will be in here besides truck repair?
I mean, I don't know right off the top of my head, but that's the major one that's of concern right now.
Why is it a concern?
So, no, there's a business that's trying to locate there, and that's what's causing the issue. The overlay is causing the issue.
So why wouldn't they just come and get it rezoned?
It's already zoned for the truck location, but it's inside the overlay.
Right, and that's not allowed.
Okay.
It's not allowed. And so
correct.
what you all are doing now is coming back, having us to change the overlay to allow that industry to be in there. That's the way around getting rezoned. Because normally what they would do right now, if we don't do this, they have to come to us to get special use permission. They have to come to us to have it zoned for that, because it's not allowed right now.
Okay, so the zoning is already M1, which allows that use. So there wouldn't be a rezoning requirement.
If we change it tonight.
No, if you remove the overlay, the zoning is still,
But
it
why
doesn't
would we
change the
remove the
zoning.
overlay?
So the original thought of the overlay was to stop at the railroad tracks, not to include the industrial park itself. So we were just asking to make that clarification.
And what I'm asking is that if a business wants to go there, that they should still come before this board instead of us making a slate where they're just permitted to be there with certain industries. Tonight, you can't tell us what industries will be allowed to go there if we do this. You can't tell us how it's gonna affect the houses that's surrounding that area. And I really would wanna know what all industries will be allowed if we do this.
So any industry was this identified on the M1, which I don't know the uses off the top of my head. However, right now,
Is truck stops allowed in M1?
no ma'am, we don't do truck stops in Henry County. Now in the cities, that's a different situation.
Okay, I'm just not comfortable with this without seeing what uses will be in here. And this is a huge chunk, and it's changing the overlay. The overlay was put in place so that we could control what type of industries would go in our overlay. You're talking about up 42. Is this 75, the big white part? How much of this is?
That's 75, the big white part is 75. So Summit Racing is already existing right there adjacent to 75. Now, you already have a tire location that separates. You have the tire shop, and I think you have a auto sales location, then the residence is behind that. So they are completely buffered from that location. You have the gas station, the hotel. I think there's a Hong Kong Express Chinese place right there. So
Yeah, but what are all the other industries around that's butting up to it, and where's this particular business trying to go? And what would be the process for this business to go through if we don't do this? The business that's trying to open.
So the business is trying to open. I mean, it wouldn't be allowed in the overlay.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So they're not allowed right now, but you all are bringing this to us to change the overlay so that they would be allowed.
Okay, so the biggest piece of this, and I hear what you're saying, gotcha. But when it's inside of an industrial park, so you expect to have a big box to have these type of industries. And so the original indication was that the overlay should have stopped at the railroad tracks. And so therefore it's inside of it, so we're just trying to clear that up. So, but I completely hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and it should be case by case. We should know where this business is going, this particular business, what is it around, and only deal with that piece instead of making a blank slate. Because right here, we're changing the overlay, and we're saying what we said before wasn't allowed in the overlay is now going to be allowed. If it's just the industrial park, then let's just deal with the industrial area and have each one of those businesses to come before the board when they're doing it to make sure that the board wants to allow that, and especially what district it's in. You're changing the entire overlay for one business.
No, I'm not changing the overlay. We're just
Removing a condition in the overlay.
No, we're removing the overlay for just this area. So nothing else changes. The overlay stays intact.
Okay.
Tucson, is Norfolk Southern on this map? Where's it located?
Is that I guess that's the railroads. If you look at the pointer on the screen,
Yeah.
you see right here, that's the railroad coming through there.
So that's where Norfolk Southern is?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so where
So this is the area for the proposed inland port too. Is that another reason why you guys are trying to remove the overlay?
I know nothing
Because they
about the
want to
inland
reduce
port.
costs in building the
I know nothing
port?
about inland port. Summit Racing is already located at this location. This is Summit Racing. This is the Pep Boys location. This is King Mill coming through here. So all of this is pretty much built up as you go down through here. And this is the parcel I think that we're referring to. So that's not very big to put a port.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit south of that. Okay.
And so if you look at this map here, you can kind of see where the blue has been removed. Again, this is industrial, and as you go back up 155, You're dealing with the strip center that's there and things of that nature. So, I mean, there's an existing buffer from the residential.
Not down with that.
Any other questions? Commissioner Wilson?
So Tucson, about 90% of that's in District 1. District 2 is in the lower left. All this rest, where you see 155, 42, 23, all that's in my district. I'm not in favor of changing anything, removing anything from the overlay. I think the overlay is actually keeping some of the developers out of this area. So I'm not in favor of changing it.
Okay, so you don't want to remove the overlay, is what you're saying?
I don't want to change what we have, at least we can put more restrictions on it.
So you don't want to remove the overlay, which is the request?
Well, you was trying to remove some restrictions where truck repair shops and all that can be added to the overlay. And what we have now, that cannot be, correct?
All right, so maybe misunderstanding here. So we're trying to remove the overlay. I'm not trying to remove it from the written part of the overlay. That still stays the same.
Okay, so I'm confused.
Right, so I'm not changing I'm only changing the boundary only, not the text.
So you're increasing the overlay?
No. All right, so, I don't know how else to.
You're removing the overlay from the industrial area.
From the industrial park.
And right now,
That's it.
we put it there to slow down industrial in that area. We put it there.
Okay.
So that certain businesses, we can just slow down what was happening in the industrial area.
Okay.
Until we can get 155, until District 1, District 2 can put some money. We did that to slow it down.
Okay.
You're saying remove it because it's industrial and those businesses should be there.
Okay,
And we're saying I'm saying I don't agree with that.
all right, not a problem.
We need to keep it like it is for now.
I thought that's what I was saying as well.
That's exactly what you said.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have one question.
Yes, Commissioner Clemens.
What's the business that's trying to go there?
I don't know the name of the business, to be honest with you, but it's, changing the tires, things of that nature for the trucks, so.
And so, if it is in the overlay, and Patrick, you can answer this, if a use is not permitted, doesn't a business owner or a landowner have the right to come before the board and ask for permissions? If it's a use that's not allowed?
Yes, property owner can file an application to rezone his or her property out of the overlay district.
So in the future, if a business comes and they want to do something that's not allowed, they should come before the board. And then that way we can make a decision as a board instead of us changing something as huge as reducing the overlay in certain areas where we put it.
Okay, we can do that. Just one point of clarity, I completely get it, but as you look at the map, it may look like a lot, but in essence, it's only gonna affect these parcels right here, because everything else is already built out. Okay.
That's in my district. But some of this stuff is undeveloped. Some of this stuff is still RA and a M1. If you look right here at the corner of King Mill Road and 42, they still have a residence there, but it's not, no one lives there. So it's no warehouses there. And if you're going down, go north, there's no warehouses there, and go across the street. And especially on the King Mill Road portion of that, that's undeveloped on both sides. when it comes across where Allen Drive is. Now, Allen Drive, a little white spot, is a residential.
Right,
That's
so,
RA.
so just to be clear, we're not even talking about that section of the, we're
But
only
you talking about up
about
here in the lighter blue,
right here. Right
which
here
is
in
the lighter blue.
Say again?
So, yes,
This kind of shows it.
okay.
That's the only section we're referring to. That's inside of the industrial park. Everything else stays the same.
Is this in conjunction with the next item that's on the agenda? Or is that a separate item?
Separate item.
Any other questions? We call for a motion.
It's a public hearing.
Madam Chair,
Public hearing.
she called for public.
Public hearing, yes.
Oh, this is a public hearing? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone want to speak for it? Anybody want to speak against it? Okay. Okay. If you're gonna
Can you
speak
come to the
against it, yes.
podium?
Come up.
Good evening. This is Vanessa Thomas. I'm just hearing, as I'm hearing the proposal of this gentleman, it sounds like it needs to be the company who wants to have their business there to come forward, just like you all were saying, and request that overlay to be removed. So as a result, I ask that this be denied because the company's not even here to speak for themselves. So if the company wants to have this overlay removed, they ought to be the ones here to make the presentation. Thank you.
I'm not the company, but I'm the architect for the company. And so we've prepared the plans for the building. And moving forward, we're told that everything was acceptable. We're not trying to do anything illegal, unethical, or unorthodox. It's just a matter of putting an industrial building in an industrial area that currently exists. And so while the owner of the company is not here, I am here as their representative to speak for the property. And so I'd request that you would honor what Mr. Kirk is requesting.
Thank you. Are you speaking for it? No, the gentleman back there raised his hand. Okay. I'd like to call for a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to deny the request.
Okay. Motion to deny, second by Commissioner Clemens. All in favor? Stacy?
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. The next item before you is a public hearing. This is a request also regarding the overlay, but instead of the boundaries, we'll be talking about some of the provisions in the overlay, namely the provision for a property that is zoned commercial, a property that also has a future land use map designation that indicates a density. This type of property, and there aren't very many of them, they have the provision under today's Unified Land Development Code to be able to develop in accordance as a mixed-use development, which means that these few properties would be able to develop with a mixture of commercial and residential, meeting all of the requirements of the overlay, meeting all of the supplemental standards for mixed use, and meeting all of the specific zoning conditions and development standards as regards to their zoning entitlement. What we're bringing before you tonight is a request for consideration of strengthening these requirements and limitations for these few properties. So for example, we're proposing that these uses be additionally limited to not allow any C3 uses. We're proposing that these properties that may develop for a mixture of commercial and residential be required to have certain amenities. We're proposing that these types of developments would be required to have grand-style monumental entrances and so forth. And we are proposing one change to what's in your exhibit books, namely the paragraph that treats the amenities. We would propose that read as follows: all developments with a residential component shall include at least 3 of the following amenities or equivalent, meeting the approval of the planning and zoning, and then it move forward as it's written in your exhibits. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd be pleased to answer questions.
You have any questions? Commissioner Wilson?
So currently, what's it zoned for?
Yes, sir, Commissioner Wilson. So if a property that's situated very narrowly like this, it would be zoned commercial, either C1, C2, or C3 within the overlay. And also, it would have a future land use map designation that would indicate a density. So for example, mixed use, high density, medium density, low density, and so forth. Those are the qualifications for this type of property to voluntarily be moved forward to develop as mixed use under the code as it is today. But we're proposing to strengthen that with these additional limitations and requirements.
So how come we can't change them when they request the rezoning?
Yes, sir. You certainly could. This is intended to encourage mixed-use development, but it's completely voluntary. So if the owner or developer of a property that meets these criteria, if they want to move forward, they would develop under the code. If they don't want to meet these standards under the code, then they would need to come back for a rezoning, just as you said, Commissioner.
Okay, so, but what's what we've done in the past, though? If it don't meet the flume, it's not in the code, they come up and they ask for those changes, and then we grant those or deny the changes to move forward. So this shouldn't be any different, correct? I mean, we could treat that the same as we've been treating in the past.
What you're describing is exactly the way that the development had been regulated until this was made a part of the code in 2018. But staff is recognizing this opportunity to strengthen that and to add additional requirements and limitations.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions? This is a public hearing. Do we have anyone here that wants to speak in favor? Anyone that wants to speak against? I'd like to call for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, our next hearing is regarding a county-initiated comprehensive plan amendment. This is regarding the corridor along East Lake Parkway between the Stockbridge city limits and the commercial node that exists already at Eastlake Parkway and Highway 155. This is something that the District 4 Commissioner brought to staff's attention regarding the potential of adding a mixed-use land use designation to this corridor. Planning and zoning staff, we coordinated with the county manager and received her direction, and so we're moving forward with a recommendation. What's illustrated on the screen and also in your exhibit books, the solid, heavy, dark line indicates the corridor that we would recommend that we treat tonight. Illustrated now is staff's recommendation. So regarding mixed use, we've noted that in the mixed use land use designation that this would support an applicant's request for rezoning for a mixture of commercial and residential, and a residential component. The policy guide would be to allow up to 16 dwelling units per acre. We've noted that it's proper planning practice to discourage so-called strip development in favor of so-called nodal development. In other words, let's develop in nodes that may expand in a regulated format. And in that regard, we're recommending mixed use on either side, both at the Stockbridge city limits, where that node at Eastlake Parkway and 42 may expand. In the east, at the existing commercial node at Eastlake Parkway and 155, we're recommending mixed use so that that existing commercial node can expand. And in the middle, we're requesting that a new node be created at the intersection of Eastlake Parkway and Springdale Road, where there's an existing traffic light. In the middle, on either side along this corridor, we are recommending a medium density residential, which would not support commercial development, but rather residential development at up to 6 dwelling units per acre. So we're recommending a modulated, regulated growth starting at these nodes as indicated, and we'd be pleased to answer questions.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Do we have anyone?
We'll have to call for.
Okay, Commissioner Holmes.
Developments previously approved MU, will they be grandfathered in?
So the previously approved mixed use, they would definitely still maintain the zoning entitlement that they would have received during the rezoning process. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner Thomas.
If you would put back up your last map, please, Stacy.
Yes, ma'am.
And please note, this is a request that was made from the commissioner. What we have done here is look at Eastlake Parkway, and the staff has taken considerable amount of time to look at where commercialization already exists. This is where the Kroger is. This is where we have the Bojangles. We have a lot of the little restaurants near 155 in that concentrated area. And we're saying that we will allow commercialization to grow in that area. That's what we're saying, down in that node, right there where it's purple at. And the infrastructure and everything is already in place for that. And then it goes down to the west end of that. That's where the CVS is, and Sylvain Funeral Home is, down in that part of it. That's other commercial area. The parts in between, we are not touching. That's why this is designed where we have nodes in there. We're not trying to do the entire corridor, nor do I want to do the entire corridor. I'm trying to encourage the commercializations in those 2 points where we already have it. That's what I'm trying to do with this, hopefully with this recommendation. And we, like I said, we do have the infrastructure there for that. And that will help us offset some of the residential growth that I have in the area. We have so much residential growth in this area, a lot of it. Over 1,200 homes already that's coming up in the area. And I need some commercialization to help offset some of that growth pattern that's taking place. And by doing it and concentrating in the areas that are already there, it gives us the ability to manage that growth and determine how that growth takes place. And so that's the reason I'm asking you, if you will, to consider the recommendation of the staff. We have taken time to look at both perspectives. We've looked at other alternatives and said, no, we don't want to do the whole area. We're not trying to get a whole bunch of concentration in between. We just want to make sure that we are inviting more commercialization and more mixed use in those nodes where it already is. The apartments are already down on the end of 42. We're inviting it. If anything comes, here's where you can look at, here's where you can talk to us about it. So I'm asking you all to please look at the fact that the infrastructure in place, it is designed to give us a way to manage the growth and to manage the concentration of where we can do commercialization and mixed use of property, and support this initiative.
Commissioner Holmes.
Wouldn't just amending the land use map accomplish what Commissioner wants to accomplish in her district without even worrying about the overlay? Why wouldn't we just do that?
Yes, sir. It is a fact that the overlay district goes along Eastlake Parkway in this general area.
It's not, the overlay district is not going to change.
That's correct.
But, to set up this corridor the way she wants to see it, all we have to do is amend the land use map to achieve her goals.
Yes, sir. And to your point, I think it's very important for all the decision makers to understand that this is indeed the comprehensive plan. It's our policy guide. It's a future land use map. To a large degree, it's our basis for defending the actions of the Board of Commissioners as the rezoning requests come in individually for individual properties. So this future land use map, it supports or it does not support certain requests for rezoning. And you guys are very much familiar with that. But that's all that this change would do, would be to change and to clarify what requests for rezoning will be supported along this corridor.
And that would be specifically for this corridor?
Yes, sir. The only change that's being proposed is what's indicated.
Okay. Commissioner Wilson.
When did we put this new flume in place? A couple years back? 18?
Yes, sir. I do believe it was 18. Originally, this configuration was adopted in 2009, but I believe the last time we changed it may have been 18.
Okay, so yeah, we put it out, we all made change, we brought it back, and we voted on the change in 2018. So when's the next time that we'll be looking at changing the flume?
That's an excellent question. The Georgia Department of Community Affairs determines when our comprehensive plans have to come back for amendment. And Commissioner, forgive me for not having it right on the top of my head, but it's either every 5 or 10 years. And so it may take us a year after we hire a consultant to actually get it done. So it'll be coming up in the next couple of years, I'm sure.
So under the current flume, though, somebody asking for a rezoning, we can change the flume then into the same process we've been through before?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any additional questions, Commissioner Clemens?
So we're changing the future land use map. And is it the purple that we're looking to change it? Because I'm confused. I hear Commissioner Thomas saying commercialization, but commercialization is the red, not the purple.
Yes, ma'am.
Purple is mixed use. So what was that purple before she's changed it to mixed use?
Yes, ma'am. So, and sorry, I went the wrong way. This is our future land use map as it is today. And you can see that it's largely the bright yellow, which is low density, up to 2 dwelling units per acre. There's a bit of the dark color, which is water authority property, and then it goes back into the yellow, which is low density. The red, just as you said, Commissioner, is straight commercial, but there's no mixed use that's indicated. So we're recommending that we add the purple, which is the mixed use, which ideally is a mixture of commercial and residential, but then also in the in-between areas that we have a future land use map that supports up to 6 dwelling units per acre instead of the 2.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Commissioner Wilson?
Last year, wasn't there some townhomes are approved in that area?
Yes, sir. So the area that you're talking about is what we're proposing to be purple. They were rezoned to RS, which is residential suburban, at up to 6 dwelling units per acre. So that was just zoned, and they're trying very hard to get this development out of the ground.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Clemens?
So it was just zoned, because when you flipped it over, it was high-density residential. So when that's already zoned, when you change it, what happens to that development?
Yes, ma'am, that's an excellent question. So whereas the bright yellow is a low density up to 2 dwelling units per acre, the peach color is a medium density up to 6 dwelling units per acre. And that subject property was rezoned to RS up to 6 in accordance with the future land use map as it is today. When we change our policy guide from medium to mixed use, technically that would support a request for mixed use and maybe some others that would allow there to be a commercial component. So let's say, for example, that these developers never are able to get this property out of the ground, and at some point in the future, if we go with mixed use, they come back for a rezoning, then a request for mixed use would then be supported.
So they would go from 6 to 16?
Well, they would have to request the rezoning, and at that point, this board would be able to put appropriate conditions. So if it's not appropriate to go to 16, you guys could condition it to something that'd be more appropriate.
Yes, Commissioner.
The way the resolution reads, it reads as if we are amending the ULDC and the overlay countywide, but we're only really focusing on this particular area. I don't know if I'm comfortable with countywide, but I mean, I would be okay with the commissioner's recommendation for her actual district.
The intent is not countywide, Commissioner. That is for sure. I am not trying to change a countywide. I'm not trying to even change the whole corridor. And I am leaving it, Commissioner Clemens, if indeed that group is not able to get that project out the ground, that it has to come back before this board. They cannot go to a 16 unit. And that's one of the reasons I'm saying, if anybody come back, and I do not have anybody, let me be frank with this, I do not have a client, I do not have anybody in intention. We're looking at the fact that this infrastructure is here and that this county is growing. And I'm saying to staff, I have a heavy residential area, and I do. And I've got 3 or 4 more coming that are only residential. And I need something to help support the residential growth that's in District 4, especially along that corridor. So I'm saying to potential whoever comes along, and I do not have a client in mind, if you want to have something other than what we are building in District 4, it needs to be in this node or that node. That's where it can be mixed development, this node or that node. Anything else in between, we won't even consider it. But I do know I need that commercialization piece. And if that's in, and if this resolution is reading like we're trying to affect the entire county, that needs to be corrected. It does not, it has no intention of doing that at all. We're talking about the purple nodes that are on your map. That's it.
If you could just add that to your motion, I think I'll be fine.
Okay.
Commissioner Clemens?
I think that, Stacey, I think you had said, Commissioner Holmes asked, was this, did it grandfather in the developments that were already there? And that's why I asked the question, because there's a development that's already approved on this particular site. And I guess it's more of a legal question for Patrick, because they were rezoned there under one thing. If we change the future land use map, and I guess Stacey said they had to come back to us if they wanted to change it, but how does it affect their existing use
This resolution will not affect anyone's current zoning.
Okay.
You're not rezoning any property. All you're doing is changing your future land use map, which is an expression of the board's policy with respect to future land uses. So what you're doing is you're saying, our new policy is along this strip, that these are the proposed land uses that we think are appropriate.
Right.
And Commissioner Holmes, make sure you're looking at the right resolution, because this resolution specifically says East Lake Parkway between these 2 points. But this would have no impact on anybody's current zoning. Even people that their zoning is RA. Now, it would impact when someone files a rezoning application. It might impact the staff recommendation whether or not it complies with the future land use map. So that's always the case when you
So
change.
this would become the future land use map?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So it's not the future land, it becomes the existing zoning now?
No, it will become the future land use map. Your zoning map will be untouched. They're different.
Okay.
To do anything. I really am trying to say, if indeed you, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I'm sorry. I am not trying to give anybody a blanket opportunity to do anything. I'm simply saying, for commercialization, mixed-use purposes, here are the no's that we will consider something of that nature. Thank you.
Okay. So, this is a public hearing. Or do we have anyone that wants to speak in favor or oppose? Okay, I'd like to call for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve with the understanding this is for an isolated area and not countywide. Also, that this is totally, that the map that is before the commissioners will be a part of the, attached to the resolution, to specifically note that this involves only the nodes that we have specified for District 4.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Have any, we'll have anyone signed up, for public comment? No?
No, ma'am.
Approval of the minutes for March 30th, 2021 budget workshop meeting draft minutes. Okay, can I get a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Next upcoming meeting and events, June 2nd, 2021 at 9 a.m. is our regular scheduled BLC meeting. It has been moved to Wednesday due to the holiday. June 15th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. is our regular scheduled BLC meeting. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.